I'm Cameron. I spent years building my career and creating a life I loved. And when my Prince Charming finally showed up, he had 4 kids in tow. Fast forward through lots of mistakes made and lessons learned, step family life was much more complicated than I realized. If you're looking for help with blended family life, you're in the right place. Welcome to the Stepmom Diaries, where we keep it real as we dish about all the things. This is your weekly dose of blended family inspiration and encouragement. You're not the wicked stepmother, so let me help you find your fairy tale ending. Come on, let's do this. Welcome. I am so glad to be with you today. We have got an incredible guest today who is transforming the way that parents approach discipline and emotional connection in their families. And I know this is something that a lot of us struggle with in step families is discipline. So today joining us is Wendy Snyder. She is founder of Fresh Start Family and a certified positive parenting educator and family life coach. Wendy specializes in compassionate discipline, which is a term I had not heard before I had this conversation with her. She helps parents move away from punishment and towards understanding and connection. And her approach empowers families to raise strong-willed kids with integrity, solving power struggles through empathy and clear boundaries rather than force. She inspires parents to learn and grow through connection-based, firm, and kind strategies. And as the host of the Fresh Start Family Show and founder of Fresh Start Family, she helps parents ditch the threats, yelling, and harsh punishments so they can live life as a joyful and confident parent with kids that listen and cooperate. Doesn't that sound amazing? So today, Wendy is going to share her insights on how parents, especially stepmoms who are navigating complex family dynamics, can become more responsive rather than reactive, using nervous system regulation techniques to foster healthier relationships and more peaceful homes. And if you have struggled with discipline, power struggles, or feeling emotionally overwhelmed as a stepmom, I know I have, this episode and this conversation is what you need. This will help you. So let's dive in to compassionate parenting with Wendy. Wendy, I am so glad to have you here today. Thank you so much for joining me.
I'm so excited to be here, Cameron. Thanks for having me.
Yes. So before we start in, and I feel like you do so much, and I feel like there is so much that we can cover today. Before we get started, though, I always like to ask for my guests origin stories. Most of my guests are stepmoms, so their origin story as a stepmom. But for you, give me your background. How did you get into doing this amazing work with parents? And, just tell me all the things. How'd you get here?
Yeah, I'd love to, Cameron. So my journey into what we call powerful parenting, there's lots of different words for what I teach. Positive parenting, conscious parenting, it's all kind of similar under the same umbrella, but we call it powerful parenting here at Fresh Start Family. My journey started when I was really just in the crapper in my own parenting journey. My little girl was 3. My son had just been born. Both of my kids had colic. So I got 2 kids with colic. So the first 3 months of babyhood was just miserable. And so once the second came into the world, I was just really at my wit's end. I had just left my corporate career where I really felt successful and like I loved what I did. I was an event planner and worked in marketing and just was pretty happy. But at the same time, when my second came along, I felt this calling to be home with them full time. And I really thought it was just going to be this like lovely, kumbaya, long naps and, exercise. And we live 2 miles from the beach. So I thought I was going to be on the beach all the time. And it just turned out to be pure chaos. My little girl, who was 3 at the time, she was born with an ironclad will, which thank God we learned how to really support and mentor versus break, which is in my world, a lot of really just harmful teachings out there around breaking a child's will. But it was just really bad. She was in timeouts 50 times a day. I was just pulling my hair out thinking, why won't this kid listen? Something's got to be wrong with her. I had her at doctors and, is she ADHD? Is she ODD? I even watched documentaries on like bipolarness in kids or like possession. I was like, maybe she's the kid that like literally needs the priest to come to our house and like maybe she's possessed. I mean, it was bad. And if you saw me at the grocery store, it was like, how you doing? And, you know, I feel like I was like in a really healthy, like fit season of my life. So I'd probably answer, oh, I'm fine. I'm just tired. But really on the inside, I was struggling. I hated parenthood. I was so PO'd that I had left my corporate career. And I actually felt a lot of guilt and shame. Like what was wrong with me? I had been given this opportunity. We had really like, I felt like I'd kind of begged my spouse, like, hey, we're losing my paycheck, but I promise you, like, we'll eat tuna fish if we need to. I really need to make this happen. I want to be home with the kids. And then here I was not enjoying it, wishing I could go back to work, wanting to run away. And so that's when we got invited to a free class that was being taught at Stella's workshop, Stella's preschool. And that was 14 years ago. I walked in those doors and finally felt like what I learned opened my eyes to how I could do things differently than how I was raised. And my part of the dance, so to speak, I was able to start taking responsibility for my reactive patterns, which really didn't show up in my life until I had kids. And I started to be able to see my little girl in a whole new light. I started to learn to love myself more and see my behaviors that I later regretted, not as flaws, but just as, you know, a nervous system that was being healed from an upbringing with the standard fear and force and autocratic parenting, my first 2 decades of life. And the light really started to come back to my day. So after a few years of having incredible results in our home with especially our strong-willed little girl really turning around and behaving much differently and us finally having the relationship that I had always wanted, I decided I really needed to teach this stuff. So I became certified, founded Fresh Start Family in 2017. So it's been about 7-8 years now that we've been helping families all over the world go from stressed and frazzled to peaceful and empowered. And we help especially strong-willed kids, the parents of strong-willed kids, because we find that those are usually the ones that bring parents to their knees. And in this world that we live in, it sure takes a lot, unfortunately, for parents to get supported and educate themselves on parenting, you know, education. There's just a standard cultural norm of like, oh, I don't need education on that front. We'll educate ourselves on a lot, but for some odd reason, we just think that we should know how to do this and, you know, job when it comes to raising human souls. But the parents of strong-willed kids are the ones that I find really are just like, I'm going to die if I don't get support here because I can't go on living with this type of chaos in my life anymore.
I love everything that you just said because I know you're talking about your kids and you're talking about, you know, biological parents, but so many of those emotions that you're talking about, stepmoms feel. And of course, we have many, many stepmoms that listen that also have their own kids. And so we are going to talk a lot about parenting, but I just want to highlight that like this bringing you to your knees and you know, life as a parent not looking like you had thought it was going to look. I mean, those are things that stepmoms feel on the daily.
Yeah.
So I love that you have kind of really hit at the core of, you know, what my folks struggle with.
And the shame
really
that
hard.
comes from that to
The
think like, what is wrong with me?
Yeah,
like
why can't I do this?
Yeah. No bueno.
So tell me, you know, you use the term powerful parenting. Tell us what that is. What does that mean?
Yeah. It means being able to influence your kids to cooperate and listen and be contributing members of your family through true power, which comes through unconditional love, modeling, integrity, compassion, empathy, firm kindness, and most of all, healthy relationship. In our world of powerful parenting, that's how we influence our children. And that is very different than how most of us were raised. Fear and force really was just the model. That's, you know, it was considered 100%. Smart parenting. Yeah. For a long time. Like if you're, and still to this day, it is the majority, right, in the world. So, I've been going to Disneyland a lot this last year. My little girl's 17. So it's her last year in our house before she goes to college. And, And it's just been wonderful because she just really wants to do Disneyland. And I'm like, you know what? Sure, kiddo, I will go spend some trips at Disneyland. But when you're at a place with a lot of people, you'll just see that still is the norm. If someone can't get their kid to do what they want, they move right to a threat. Might be a punishment, might be raising their voice. It's intimidation.
Oh, I'll give you something to cry about.
Yeah, I'll give you something to cry about. It is fear of some sort. So most of us were raised with a fear-based model and really an external control model, which means that even if the opposite side of the coin of fear was the carrot dangling. So I will motivate you to do what I want, young human soul, by me controlling something. And so if it wasn't you getting hurt or you losing something or you getting hit or isolation or the removal of unconditional or love in that moment, then I'll dangle the carrot to make it something you do want, but I control the carrot. So it's like, if you listen, then you're going to get the jelly bean, then you'll get a hug, then you'll get acceptance, forgiveness, that type of stuff. And so again, in powerful parenting, we just flip all that on its head and we heal ourselves first. We look at our own reactive patterns and we understand that we can never, ever, 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 ever expect our children or stepchildren to do something that we are not consistently modeling and embodying. So everything from picking up your messes and keeping your room clean and doing your dishes to being on time for school or speaking to people respectfully or making amends after you have damaged a relationship or taking responsibility for a mistake instead of denying or blaming others. All that kind of stuff we teach through modeling because 99% of what kids learn is caught, not taught. So no matter how much you lecture a kid, if you turn around and have hypocrisy in your life, you will never, ever be successful with them learning that life skill. They might turn on the showmanship and do it while you're watching over their shoulder. But as soon as you're gone or, behind your back, they are not going to have that life skill. So we teach life skills. We use compassionate discipline, which is all about learning from your mistakes instead of feeling bad about what you've done. And we see strong-willed children as blessings in the world, not curses. And so that's kind of an overview of some of the things that we do here when it comes to powerful parenting, but it's all relationship-based and it's firm and kind connection-based parenting, which includes setting very strong limits. A lot of people get positive parenting confused with permissive parenting. It is not the same thing. I find in my community and definitely within my own parenting walk, we learn, we double down on limits. We become very, very good at setting strong limits. We just don't do it with fear, pain, shame, humiliation, all that kind of stuff. But a lot of times parents in our type of community, they are actually a little bit of the outcast because they're the ones who are actually setting the firm boundaries around phone devices or kids wearing helmets or, whatever it may be. There's very, very firm limits and we're following through with consistency.
I love that. And I love the idea of leading through example. And that's something, I always talk to my stepmoms about connection before correction. They should not be disciplining their stepkids until there is a really, really solid bond there. And a lot of times that takes years to form. So really the discipline happens from the parent, from their spouse. That being said, they can set a great example of the way that everybody in the household can expect to be treated, the types of things that are going to be the norms in the household, and they can kind of back up their spouse with all of that. But I want to talk a little bit about, I was going to start with some of the discipline stuff, but I want to ask you about being responsive instead of reactive, because I really like that concept. And, you have done some work around kind of understanding your own nervous system in relation to being more responsive. Talk to me a little bit about those concepts.
Yeah. The nervous system really is everything. It is everything. And it's designed to keep us safe. So the more we learn to have compassion with it, especially with our reactive tendencies, the sooner it will become more able to find safety in these imperfect moments. And that's really just what's happening the nervous system is really conditioned over the first 2 decades of our life, especially the first 7. So the first decade, especially, but for sure the first 2 decades. And it soaks up the feeling or the temperature of your home growing up. And from a parenting front, it's around mistakes. So when mistakes were made or someone was imperfect or there was a disagreement or uncomfortableness, what was the vibe? What was the tone in your house? Was there safety? Was there peaceful conflict resolution? Was there a parent that was teaching how to learn from your mistakes? Or was there this stress, fighting, yelling? Even for people who grew up without yelling parents, was there a withdrawal or a holding back of love or silent treatment? Like anything that felt dangerous, because to a child, to any human, I will tell you, but especially a child, one of our basic needs is belonging. And so when we have the withdrawal of love, it just feels so dangerous, and it's just very stressful. And so our little nervous system soaks up the tone, and that becomes standard. That becomes like what it knows. And what happens with the nervous system is as we grow up and as the neural pathways get paved, like little freeways, right? Like it becomes easier to drive on the freeway than it is to like forge a new path through the woods to get to grandma's house or whatever. So what happens is that actually becomes what we feel is safe. So if there is a mistake made, then our nervous system is like, hey, it's safer to like lay the smack down, react fast. Don't let anyone talk to you like that, because if someone talks to you like that, that means you're weak, you're failing, like danger. Alarms go off. You've got to protect yourself. You've got to like do all this stuff. So it really becomes a very unconscious pattern of reacting for many. And it often will match what the tone and how things were done in your home growing up. So as you start to learn how to heal your nervous system, which we do so much of within our Fresh Start Experience program, you start to be able to just understand how to signal safety to your body when there is a triggering moment. And the more you unpack that and realize that it is like most misbehavior is not a 4-alarm fire, but it feels like it to your body. It feels like a bear is chasing you. It feels like, and as someone who I've been doing this work for 14 years, and my theory is that it often, like the amount that you were in your home where you witnessed or had that type of behavior, it probably will take that long if you're fully entrenched in the work and supportive environments or mentorship, like I am, like my community is. It'll probably take that long to unpack it or to unlearn it, to like really consistently. So that is true for me. So 14 years in, it took me about 7 years to stop yelling. And then I still like fly off the handle every now and again. I actually just flew off the handle a little bit on Easter night. I was full on doing a makeup for my little girl yesterday, who's 17, and we can talk more about makeups and compassionate discipline, but it's still there for me, like I like basically cursed at her, and I was like, oh my gosh, as I was doing it, I'm like, wow, like in loving observance of myself, I'm like, wow, this is a really thick, explosive pattern in you, sweet girl. And that's how I talk to myself now. It's not like, what is wrong with you? How can you show up and teach and host this podcast? And no, now it's like, wow, that is wild how long this takes to unlearn. And it's okay. You can patch this up. Like you can help this little girl know that she never deserves to be talked to like that. And that is way more important than being perfect as a parent, but just if you are a reactive parent in any regards, you're not alone. You're not broken. You're not failing. You're just probably learning to heal your nervous system.
But that is an important point, that it takes so much time. And that's something that our community always has to work through, because it's like I can identify that there are these problems there or these challenges in step family life, but it just takes so long to work through it. Right.
Yeah.
Walk me through an example of how, like, when someone is in the moment how they can pull themselves back and sort of, get a check on their emotions and get more regulated and
Yeah.
deal with those stressful parenting moments.
Well, one of the best things you can do is what we teach is called a pause button or heart connector. And that's like, I'm a very, very physical kinesthetic person. I grew up an athlete and I'm just like a big mover. If I have to be still, it's like my body's like, uh-oh, dangerous. So I like to teach like immediately put your hand on your heart and literally pivot and take a step to the side. Like that's my physical like go-to. I am much more likely to be able to start the self-regulation or process of like bringing awareness to what emotion I'm having or the trigger, or like we teach like a protection learning pattern of awareness if I'm in movement. So I will often go fill up my water bottle. If you can source nature, that's like one of my favorite nervous system regulation strategies. There's a lot of things you can do. There's a lot of different breaths that are like, they have the science behind that, like actually, calm or help you regulate your nervous system to not go down the same path. But for me, my favorite is nature. So even if you are in a house, if you can source nature, because nature is the ultimate, just example of steady presence. Like it's not in overworking. It's just like it works things out in its time. So like right now I have a palm tree out my office that I'm just loving my new office because I get to source this tree all the time to bring me regulation. So you might step in the backyard, you might listen to the birds sing, you might watch the clouds go by, but anything to just create that space between the stimulus, which is the trigger, your kid, whatever they've done, or your stepkid, and your response. That space lies your ability to choose. That's what Viktor Frankl taught us. His book Man's Search for Meaning is one of the best places to start if you're looking to like really create a space. If you're someone who has a pattern of reactivity with your stepkids, and then within that pause button, we will bring attention to what our awareness to what our intention is. And some of the old school knee jerk intentions are like, to not let someone treat you like that, to not let them get away with this, to show them who's boss, to make them pay for their mistake. Some little things that kind of like will pop into your subconscious if you give it space to like journal those. And the new intentions that we like to call on are to teach, to model, to show grace. Some people, let's say in my community, might be like, oh, to like channel Christ or whatever your faith, is. Things like that will help you remember who you are in that moment. We also do personal declaration statements of just like remembering who you really are. That some of those things will help you just create that space so you have a chance at then responding with behavior and words the way you want to versus that kind of knee-jerk reaction.
I love that, remembering who you are, because I think, probably 99% of us, when we react in a way that we are maybe embarrassed by later on, it's hard to reinforce with ourselves, okay, that's not really who I am. Like, I know who I am, and who I am is not that person. And to give ourselves a little bit of grace, that's really hard.
Yeah. Yeah. My thing, like, so in that moment on Sunday night, like I really was an aggressive person in that moment. And that's not who I am. It was just behavior, right? Like I acted aggressively. I wouldn't even say that I showed up as an aggressive person, but I acted with aggression. And when you look at it from this lens, it was just behavior. It was just my nervous system, like, still going there. But really inside, I am who I truly am when I've had enough rest, when I'm like well-resourced, when I'm not fighting a cold. I am kind and compassionate and patient and really brave, right? Like I am a painful generational cycle breaker. And that sometimes still acts with aggression.
That's really self-aware. And I love the idea of like, hey, stepmom, just sit down and come up with just a bomb statement like that. I'm a generational cycle breaker. That's badass.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a
I
really
agree.
great affirmation to be able to tell yourself in the moment.
Yeah.
Well, let's switch gears a little bit and talk about, you mentioned compassionate discipline, and this is one stepmoms struggle with. And, I kind of alluded to it. We always, and research says step parents should not discipline until a bond is firmly established with the stepchild, which can take years and years, right? So we like to leave that to the parents. But, a lot of times stepmoms bring kids into the family, or they have what we call an ours baby with their partner. So discipline plays into a lot of different parts of the family. It's also one of the most challenging things in a step family, because especially when you're both bringing kids in, you may have different parenting styles. And, how does all of that interplay with compassion? Well, first of all, tell me what compassionate discipline is. And then let's talk about kind of how it would play out in a step family where you have potentially two different sets of kids coming in, but then you also have two houses that the kids are going back and forth and may have different discipline standards, different rules, all of that kind of good stuff. So I've just thrown a lot at you. So go.
Yeah. Well, remember those questions and you might have to guide me as I answer, but that's great. Yeah. Okay. So compassionate discipline versus punishment. So let's just start there. So punishment is really based on the past. It's based on retribution and vengeance and making someone pay for their mistake. It is focused on the mistake. Discipline is focused on the future. It is based on learning. It is based on building new habits. I always like to think of like the Olympic downhill skier, right? Like you don't become Lindsey Vonn by just doing things once and then your coach reaming you because you fell and like annihilated your knee again. And now you're going to have your seventh surgery. Like, what is wrong with you? No, that's not how Lindsey Vonn got to who she is. She rode those hills literally probably 100,000 times, and someone helped her learn from her mistakes. And she corrected, and they also poured into her. They believed in her. They showed her her strengths. They strengthened her where she had weaknesses, right? Like, that's discipline. And so it's just this wild thing. Like, where did we get the notion? Like, who freaking started this? It's bizarre. But where do we get the notion that in order to make kids behave better, we must first make them feel worse? It's wild, especially after having raised kids. My little guy's 14, so he was born into this work. He's never known anything besides compassionate discipline. Stella, poor thing, she had to deal with it for 3 years, but she's known it for 14 years now. But it's just so insanely effective. And basically it's just, you become a teacher. You become a teacher. You teach your children how to learn from their mistakes. You see the opportunity, not the flaw. You see the ability to come beside your child and be a fellow human, not a hypocrite. Because 9 out of 10 times, a child is often just mimicking or modeling the same behavior they've learned somewhere. And so we get to come beside them and just say, hey, there's nothing wrong with you. And everybody messes up. Mistakes make you human. They don't make you bad. And at the same time, we're going to hold you responsible, right? Like, we're going to teach you. We're going to require that we learn how to do things differently tomorrow. And we're going to practice a whole heck of a lot. So in compassionate discipline, we teach 3 main components of compassionate discipline that make up us like a really healthy toolkit. Self-calming, which is always where we start. Natural consequences, which is where we let life do the teaching. And then logical consequences, which is where we step in and do an actual activity or conversation or something that creates the life skill. That's where the practice comes in. And the thing that I want you to understand, Cameron, I get it that step parents are like, it's not air quotes your kid. So like you can't discipline, but like, here's the deal that I always tell anybody. Like if you're at the park or if you have a kid over for a play date, when you are well-versed in compassionate discipline, it is never a problem to support a child because you're no longer believing that you have to hurt and harm and intimidate and shame and do something that's going to drive a stake in your relationship. So it really just becomes not a problem for anybody, whether you're a step parent or a regular parent, to say, hey, this not working. So like, I need you to go take a self-calming break while I go take a self-calming break. That's compassionate discipline. Hey, I'm going to let you get cold at the parade because you wouldn't bring your jacket, instead of rescuing and then making you feel bad about it. Or like, instead of guilting you later, you should have listened to me. I'm just going to let life do the teaching. I'm going to let you get cold. Anybody can do that. You don't need to let a spouse do that. And then with logical consequences, that's just like, hey, I'm going to actually preferably come together with my partner and say, hey, here's an idea on how we can teach this life skills. And I've got some great stories for you if you want to hear like actual stories of what they look like. But of course, coming together with a spouse and saying, hey, instead of grounding this kid or putting them in a timeout or lecturing them, what would you say if we did a little role play and we practiced with her this weekend what it looks like for next time for her to pick up her room before she goes back to her mom's house, right? And like, also at the same time, what do you think about us upping our game of picking up our own room? Because I realized after she left, our room is like a nightmare. We've had laundry for like 5 days on the ground and the dog's sleeping on it. But like, then we reamed her because she didn't clean up her room before, like these are just, but like, it becomes very healthy. So I think the classic thing of like, only one spouse handles the discipline, that's because it was punishment, and it's like, it was just kind of an odd model. So nowadays we just do things in a healthy way, and having a conversation around when a partner has different beliefs about discipline versus punishment, that's like a universal thing that's heartbreaking, but there are so many ways to like create the unity there and hopefully get that partner on board so they're no longer thinking that they have to punish a child. But, that's a definite journey that everybody goes through, whether you're a step parent or a regular parent.
Yeah.
Not everybody, but if you have that kind of more unsupportive, especially on the discipline front, we see it a lot. Not in all families. We have a lot of really supportive spouses who are just like, boom, they hear the message and they're like, count me in. How do I do this? Help me change.
Yeah, and I like the idea of, that there are consequences, but they don't have to necessarily be punishments, right?
Yeah.
So walk me through like a real life example. So let's say, Johnny goes over to a friend's house for a sleepover, and you get a call in the middle of the night that you need to come pick Johnny up because he's gotten in a fight and he's given a kid a black eye. How does compassionate discipline deal with that?
Well, the first thing I would look at there is, where has this kid had aggression modeled in his life? For sure. Number one thing. I'm not even thinking about discipline, because if you've got a child hitting another child in the middle of the night, this kid is suffering. We teach that when it comes to like, especially physical violence or revenge misbehavior, which is one of the category of misbehaviors we teach about. That is a child who is feeling hurt, that has a mistaken belief that when I feel hurt, I must hurt back, often because that's what's been modeled to me. So I would stop myself in my tracks and be like, wow, there's suffering happening within this child. And then second, I wonder where this kid has picked this up. And then I would address that. And then I would handle the misbehavior from a revenge angle, of not like a consequence and punishment angle. So like a lot of times in our world, we will actually coach, because clients will come in our Fresh Start Experience membership program, and they'll say, what is the consequence here? And we'll say, let's backtrack and let's actually like go through the revenge misbehavior redirection kind of cycle, or step by step. And that's all about reestablishing the relationship, helping this child understand like how to process the emotion of hurt in a healthy way, and then how to take care of themselves next time in a way that respects themselves and others, while also taking responsibility for your contribution to this skill that they've learned. So that's kind of an example to answer your question there. But I'll give you a few examples from my own life that might help you see what this looks like. So the most recent one I can think of that was a really big one for us was my daughter, who's a high level athlete. She's going to be playing D1 beach volleyball in college at like a top 10 school. So she's high level athlete. So we and as painful generational cycle breakers, we were really hoping that our kids would avoid the whole like, hey, you start drinking and doing drugs. So like we were like 14, 15 when I think I was at like keg parties by the time I was 16, and I grew up in Maryland, and it was like, that was like what you did. You numbed yourself and you've like learned to belong by learning to party very, very young. And so Terry and I were like, man, we really hope our kids, and we're this different family. And then one day we found out that our little girl was drinking at 15 and vaping. And we were like, oh my gosh, what's happening? And right away, it was just like, oh my God, this kid's an athlete. Like this, no, this is not supposed to happen. And then we slowed down and we were like, and actually it was like a crazy, crazy season of healing for me. Because really, really quickly, God was like, Wendy, we got to look at your habits, sweet girl. And that was when I really got the memo that I had been using alcohol in my own life for 30 plus years, to numb, to fit in, to belong, to relax. And I was still using wine. Like it was like this culture, like, oh, that's just what adults do. You just numb yourself on Friday night. You can't go to a wedding without getting tipsy. And then I was expecting my little girl to belong and to fit in and to numb, or to be able to handle the highs and lows of life by just being this natural kid. Right. And so I looked at Terry and I was like, honey, I think it's time. I've got to stop drinking. And it was so emotional. And I really felt like deep down inside, I can't do this. And I picked myself up, and I think I went to one AA meeting, and I was like, first off, these people are amazing. AA is like the most amazing humans on the planet. And I realized like, oh, okay, I think I'm okay. I can do this. That was 2.5 years ago. And there was a logical consequence there too. We decided not to have her go to a Steve Lacy concert. We had gotten her tickets to a concert. It was going to be her first concert alone with her best friend, who she had been dabbling, doing this like new little drinking thing with. And we said, hey, that's not going to happen. We're going to sell those tickets because it's related. It teaches responsibility. These are the 4 R's that we teach. It's respectful and it's reasonable. And it's related because we can't send you to a concert alone when we're not quite sure you've developed the habit yet of being responsible and safe out in the world without us, right? So that was kind of the logical consequence piece, was we're going to sell these tickets. And, we'll get you a new pair of Nikes or something for the gym, but we're not going to do this. But the biggest part of it, Cameron, is Terry and I stepped up our game and we started modeling. And I will tell you that I've never felt better in my life. First off, our kids will often be our biggest blessings if you allow them to be, and they will teach you the greatest lessons in life, again, if you allow them to be. I've never felt more healthy as a human. I am so thankful that habit is broken. After 30 years, I no longer need Chardonnay to relax at a party or feel like I can fit in at a girls' night out. And my little girl, as she chased her dreams and reached this goal of being this D1 college athlete, which is like really a needle in the haystack situation. 1% of high school athletes go on to become D1 college athletes. But she said to me and Daddy, she said, I'm just so excited to be entrenched in this program for 4 years and just be happy and healthy, to be around people that are really going to live the same lifestyle as me, where it's not the big part. It's not about the party. It's just about being healthy and like strong, and to look at my little girl and know that was the kid 2 years ago or whatever, who was like literally sneaking alcohol and vaping on a Tuesday. And now she's one of the only kids, in her social circle that doesn't go get hammered at almost 18 years old and do the keg party thing. And she's always the driver. So that's just one example. One more story for her was I dropped her off at band, and I have another one for my son too, who was little when this happened. But for Stella, I dropped her off at band practice one night. And she was about 12. And I said, now you can have pizza with your friends, but I don't want you to cross the street near the stoplight because it's dangerous. I feel scared you're going to get hit. So I want you to cross over there. I pulled to the side because I was worried that she was going to be tempted to do peer pressure. Sure enough, she crossed by the stoplight. And I was mad and I was scared, and I could have gone home and done some punishment. I could have taken away her iPad. I could have grounded her. I could have not let her come to pizza the next week before band practice. She's a drummer. And instead I was like, okay, we're going to do some compassionate discipline here. We had a beautiful, really like heart-driven conversation that turned out to be very lengthy that night, about traumatic brain injuries. We talked about peer pressure. We talked about how hard it must be to be the kid that's different with a family who doesn't let you have an iPhone till high school, and to have this family that like cares so much about your health that they really like, have these strong roles. And she was in tears and just really opening up to me. And then I said, okay, so next time I'm going to take you back next Tuesday night, but we need to do a redo. Redos are like a form of logical consequences. And this time I'm going to drop you off, have fun. And I just need you to pave the new neural pathway that it is safe for you to be different than your friends. So I want you to have your pizza, go to the stop sign and cross. And even like, we're going to practice what you're going to say. If they're like, come on, don't be stupid. Like, it's just a quick run across the street. And she got to practice with me saying, no, don't worry. You guys can go if you want, but I'm going to cross at the stop sign. We practice saying things like, oh, my mom's like, like this, or just not saying anything about mom. Like, I get it. I'm just going to cross at the stop sign. And sure enough, I pulled over to a place where, she couldn't see me. And I think she knew I was probably watching her, and she did it. And she did it. And it was like 2 weeks later, daddy was going to work one day and she could not see him. She had no idea that he was near, but she was waiting, on her bike in our world, Southern California. There's like e-bikes everywhere. And she's at the stoplight, and all these kids, they had pushed the thing, and they were all like impatient and going real fast just to like get it, even though the walking guy, we call it, wasn't on. And he watched Stella 2 weeks later, or 2 months later, something like that, without anybody watching her, look around. You could tell she was tempted, but she waited. She waited for the entire stoplight thing to go through. So that's just an example. And then that's probably too many stories, but I have ones for little kids too, in case you want to hear any of those.
That's amazing. Yes. Give me one for a little. Give me one for a little, because I know we have a lot of stepmoms who've got littles.
Yeah. Okay. So little one. So my little guy, so he's 14 now. And again, he was born into this work. So lucky duck, he didn't ever have to deal with punishment, but his thing has always, he's my attention kiddo. Stella's my power kid. Taryn's my attention kiddo, which just means that they're like seeking to feel loved by attention. Like if you look at me, if someone's paying attention to me, then everything is good. So he used to get in trouble for talking in class. And actually that kind of is his common thing, that is his lifelong skill that he'll continue to work on for a long time. But I would get it, like I got a note sent home one day, and the teacher was like, hey, this is the second time I've talked to him about like group thing. It's not a recital. It's like where kids get together in elementary school and they watch someone on stage, something, an assembly. That's what it's called, Cameron, assembly. And he keeps chatting and it's really rude. Like I need him to be quiet during assembly. And so Taryn was always my kiddo that would like get really embarrassed when he would make a mistake. So sometimes kids are just really scared of judgment and they get really embarrassed. So it was a lot for him to work through teacher notes when they got sent home. And so it was even more important, not more, but equally as important to be able to show this kid grace and say, there's nothing wrong with you. You're just developing a life skill to be able to stand on your own 2 feet when other friends are chatting and talking and pushing each other. You get to, and you will learn how to get up and move, or just stay silent, or say, hey, I'll talk to you later. And so I think he was 6 or 7 when this happened. And so at the time he was really into Matchbox cars. So we got out the Matchbox cars before we watched TV, because it was like, no, we're not going to turn on a show. We're not going to do something fun. We call this sequencing versus threats. Threats is like, if you don't do this, then you're not watching a show. Sequencing is like, first we do this, then we can watch the show. So we got out his Matchbox cars and we set it up like an assembly. And I said, let's do it the way that it happened. And I pretended one little race car was the teacher, and I got really mad, and I came over and I was like, and then I said, to his race car. I was like, how do you feel? Like, what happened? And then we talked about how do you feel later. And then we said, let's redo it. And this time I want you to practice just getting up and like moving a little bit, or you can choose to just do bubbles in your mouth and tell that kid, I'll talk to you later. Right? Like you choose, and I forget which one he chose. But we actually practiced because play is one of the roads to a child's mind. Touch is too, but play is very, very effective at teaching the life skill. And so he practiced with the Matchbox cars, which lowered the embarrassment. Because role plays can also be done like in an acting format, but little kids, especially if you do it with toys or dolls, they really respond well. And that really helped. Like he didn't get in trouble much, I will say. Again, he's still like his teacher, in Spanish, like a year ago was like, hey, he's kind of chatty. But then same thing. We had a similar conversation. We helped him remember you're capable. I know it's tempting, but it's just never been something that he gets into a ton of trouble. And so that's an example of what to do with little kids. The play is often really, really effective.
I really love kind of being able to have these conversations with kids about the behavior and everything. You're almost, you are enforcing consequences when you need to, but you're almost kind of giving them back some control. Like, hey, I'm going to trust you to like discern what the right thing to do here is. And I'm going to show you how to do that, I think it's great. Yeah. I feel like I could ask so many more questions, but thank you so much for joining us. Will you tell everyone where they can find Fresh Start Family, where they can find you, what kind of programs you've got for folks?
Yeah, thank you, Cameron. Well, come find our podcast, the Fresh Start Family Show, that Cameron is going to be a guest on. So exciting. And if you want to learn more about discipline, I teach a free 1-hour workshop, freshstartfamilyonline.com/discipline. It comes with a free learning guide where I go into detail about those 3 segments: self-calming, natural consequences, and logical consequences. It comes with a really beautiful printable of the 4 R's that you can put on your fridge to really help you remember that if you're going to do something to teach a kid a life lesson, then make it, related, respectful, reasonable. And the 4th R, which is slipping my mind right now, but that's a really great learning bundle to grab. And then that free workshop, come hang out with me. You can ask questions. We can engage in a highly interactive format. And we find that really helps people understand how to implement logical consequences. And then I'm Fresh Start Wendy on Instagram. So please come find me and say hello. It'd be wonderful to support you.
I love it. Well, thank you so much. You're doing wonderful work out there in the world for parents, and we appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, Cameron.
That's it for this week. If you've enjoyed our chat, I hope you'll help spread the word. Share this episode with friends and head on over to wherever you listen to podcasts and leave me a review. And don't forget, for more great stepmom content, head on over to thiscustomlife.com and follow me on social media. Just search This Custom Life on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Pinterest. Until next time, you keep being you and know that we are in this together. See you here next week.